and it will be made available for students. So let us start. First of all, I'm very, very thankful. We are very thankful for Karen No from the ACA. She's a student engagement officer and a very, very lovely person who's been extremely busy, I should say busier than normal, once these draft standards decided to kick in and go public. And I'm sure you're all quite aware of the conversations that have been going on, particularly within our student cohort, and even some other student cohorts. So we are very, very privileged and very thankful to have Karen with us. Karen is an integral part of the Australian Counselling Association, and she's the face to all of the students, and is constantly engaging with student members and other students who aren't members, but they want to know more information about the ACA and in this particular case, the standards. So I'm going to hand over to Karen, and she's going to explain to us where we're at with draft standards and the things to know and the things that you absolutely need to know. All right, so thank you very much, and Karen, no, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. Hopefully, we can alleviate some fear and some maybe miscommunication out there about national standards, and just let you know where we are and what's going on. Okay, I do have a presentation, so give me 2 seconds and I'll just pop this up. Now, this was one I did do for a different presentation, and there is a meeting, an announcement from Jody. She is her son has graduated now, so just be aware of that. But I will share this with you now. Now, just give me a sec. Okay, so George, can you just let me know that you can see that on the screen?
We can see that. That's perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Fantastic. Okay, so before I start today, I will still do an acknowledgement. So ACA acknowledges the diverse Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of Australia as the traditional owners of the lands upon which we operate. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and value their continued custodianship of the lands, waters and seas. Okay, so before I start, I do have a message from Jody. Jody is our CEO. Jody has been in this role now for 12 months, and we've been very, very busy under Jody's leadership, but lots of changes have come through too, which are really exciting. National standards is one of them. All right, so I'm going to play Jody's recording. You can hear that, and then we'll move into what the national standard is and what it means for everybody.
We've lost sound there, Karen. I think
CEO of
it's
the
because you're
Australian
muted.
Counselling Association. I apologise I'm unable to join you in person today. My son is graduating year 12, so it is a very special occasion for my family. I wanted to take a moment to share my insights and overviews of a few things that are happening in our space at the moment as my contribution to your session. This week's big news was the release of the draft national standards for counsellors and psychotherapists. And it was pleasing to see our advocacy efforts recognised of the diversity of our ACA community with the inclusion of all levels of education from...
Oh, I'm sorry, did that just stop?
Yes, that just stopped.
I don't know what happened. Sorry, we'll just skip.
Start again.
I apologise I'm unable to join you in person today. My son is graduating year 12, so it is a very special occasion for my family. I wanted to take a moment to share my insights and overviews of a few things that are happening in our space at the moment as my contribution to your session. This week's big news was the release of the draft national standards for counsellors and psychotherapists. And it was pleasing to see our advocacy efforts recognised of the diversity of our ACA community with the inclusion of all levels of education from diplomas through to masters. This is an important step in recognition of the contribution that counsellors across varying educational levels can play in supporting those in need. We are in a mental health crisis, and there is a mental health workforce shortage. It is pleasing to see that the government recognise this and are taking steps in addressing this situation. It is also encouraging to see that the draft standards align similarly, with some slight variances, to ACA's existing registration framework. It is important that collectively we understand that we are at the beginning of an important period of change in our profession. Whilst counsellors have been working for many years, we have only had recognition by formal mention in the federal budget in the last 2 years. The National Standards is our launchpad to streamline standards and creating consistency. This consistency will not only provide a pathway through future opportunities, including employment, it is also an important step in educating our colleagues, employers, and the public around the vital role that counsellors have in providing support to those in need. These changes will not occur overnight. It will occur over many years, but what an exciting time to be involved as we begin to professionalise our profession and, most importantly, define our professional identity. Now, what's really important is the implementation and timeline of these standards remain unknown at this time. Implementation, as well as governance, being the oversight of these standards, is out of scope for this current project. There are other reform projects being undertaken by the Department of Health and Aged Care around the scope of practice review, the NRAS review, which is the National Registration and Accreditation Scheme, as well as the development of the National Standards Project. All of these projects have dependencies in some shape or form, and ACA has been involved in all of these by having a seat at the table in these discussions. Discussions around the wider self-regulatory framework across all health professions was discussed at the scope of review project, and this is being reviewed as part of the NRAS project. So the decision around this and what this means for counselling is likely to be a recommendation from these projects. Again, the emphasis is on likely, and it's important to note that anything said on implementation at this time would be purely speculative. So as we begin to prepare and adjust for change, there will be changes. It is important that we as leaders, educators, and influencers in this space take the opportunity to be an active change agent. The development of the national standards was required because of the inconsistencies that exist today. And this is the first step in strengthening and advancing our profession. It is important that we see beyond today and look towards a future that, once implemented, will be supported by legislation, perhaps a different type of regulation, and more employed roles than there are today. We are advocating for parity with our peers in allied health, to be afforded the same opportunities and roles. And our goal and role is to help people, and we should never lose focus of this. So with this said, I will hand you back to Karen, who will continue with ACA's presentation today. Thank you, and over to you, Karen.
Alrighty, so I apologise if you couldn't hear that. It should have been playing directly through the Zoom. I can send that to George anyway, and you can all watch that separately should you need to do so. I am sorry for that. It should have played so everyone could hear that quite easily. Okay, so national standards. Okay, so let me explain a little bit about what it is and why. So the Australian government allocated $300,000 last year in their budget to develop the national standards for counsellors and psychotherapists in Australia. Okay, this was done on a federal level under the Department of Health. Okay, ACA was selected as one of 2 organisations representing the counselling profession. That's ACA and PACFA. Okay, the project is now completely underway and the draft has now been released. It was released on the 11th of November 2024 and is currently out for public consultation. All feedback regarding this draft is due back on the 13th of December 2024, which is next Friday. Once we've gone through this and you have feedback, I highly recommend getting involved. You can put in your feedback too. This is open for public consultation, whether you're working in the industry or you're a student. It doesn't matter. I'm putting my own feedback in, and I don't work in the industry, although I'm part of the advocate. I'm not a counsellor, but I'm definitely putting my own personal feedback in. We can all get involved. This is your future. So I would highly recommend having a look, and we will do that shortly to sort of break it down a little bit more. The development of the national standards will follow with the implementation of the standards. Now, implementation is part 2 of the project, which is yet to be confirmed. So this standard is a draft at the moment. Once this draft is approved and it is signed off, right, by the government, there will be an implementation stage. Now, currently, we don't know when that's going to be or how long that's going to be. However, ACA is advocating for a 3 to 5 year implementation period, okay? So meaning that, let's just say the draft is signed off next year, which is 2025, we wouldn't be looking at implementation of this till 2028, 2029, maybe 2030 for some things, depending on what they are. So we're quite some time off yet before implementation would come through. There would also need to be allocated funds for the implementation stage to come through the budget as well, which would be in next year's budget. So what does this mean for you guys? Okay, anyone who is currently studying a diploma of counselling, graduate diploma, bachelor or master of counselling, nothing changes for you. Okay, nothing changes. You're doing your qualification. Once you complete your qualification, you would still go in at level 1 registration doing a diploma of counselling with ACA. Until implementation comes in, you have to excuse me. Until implementation comes in, that's where these new standards would come into effect. So we have time, there's plenty of time. Okay, nothing changes. If you completed a Master of Counselling, you would still go in at level 2. Okay, nothing's changed. ACA requirements have not changed. It's still 10 hours of supervision, 25 points in professional development. If in 2 years' time you've got 50 hours of supervision, you would still move to level 2, right? That's really important to know. Nothing has yet changed. It's not happening tomorrow, next week, or next year, all right? So let me just go through it a little bit. Okay, I'm not going to talk about specialised today because it's a little bit vague and we're waiting for some clarity on that. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the whole standard, right? Because I'll break it down when I get to our matrix screen and you'll understand a little bit more, but this is about the requirements. Okay, so currently they're proposing, and remember this is nothing more than a draft, okay? So, and this is 3 to 5 years from now. Let's just picture it in the future, not today. Okay, so in order to get registered, all right, you would go in at the foundational level, which is a qualification, accredited qualification in counselling, which you guys are doing. Your course is accredited with ACA at level 5 or 6, so that's diploma or graduate diploma, with less than 450 client contact hours. So it's 0 to 450. If you've got none and you've just joined, of course you've got nothing. Okay, and that's also including now bachelors, masters, and grad dips at that foundational level who have no experience. All right. That's really important to know that you can still get registration at foundational, right? In order to move to qualified, which is what we call level 2 in our current membership, you would need to have 450 to 750 client contact hours. Now, when that comes to ACA registration, and the language is a little bit different in national standards, so bear with me. So if you're with ACA and you do 50 hours of supervision, okay, that is considered to be 500 client contact hours with ACA because we only upgrade off supervision hours. So therefore you would fall into that qualified section once you've reached the 450 client contact hours. So in theory, it's 45 hours of supervision. So it's actually come down a little bit, okay? And then when we go into area focus placement, now this is courses for the future. This is not now, you would not have to complete your a placement in your current diploma as it is. Your course is perfectly fine and they'll be perfectly fine for quite a few number of years yet. This is in the future. So let's just say in 2029, that is where a 100-hour placement will come into diplomas moving forward, and at least a 200-hour placement in bachelor, grad dip and masters moving forward. This does not impact anybody right now. Okay, this is future thinking and this is where it'll go in the future. Okay, CPD, instead of 25 points in professional development, which is how we do it now, it'll go to 20 hours of CPD. So just a little bit of a name change there. Everyone uses CPD, we use OPD, but it'll be changed to 20 hours now. So that's a reduction in terms of the 25 points. And then remember, future thinking, not today. Everything is as normal right now. Okay, so in terms of supervision, supervision will change. So when you're in that foundational level, and let's just say 3 years from now, you would have to undertake supervision at a ratio of 1 supervision hour per 10 client contact hours. Once you get up to qualified, you would then do 1 hour of supervision per 20 client contact hours. That is the current standard now. The current standard is you do 1 hour of supervision per 20 client contact hours. Now, we know that doesn't work for everybody, because if you're working in a workplace, you might be doing a 40-hour week. Your client contact hours might be 20 hours of that hour of that time, but you might only do 1 hour of supervision a fortnight within a workplace. So it's flexible. Usually that's for someone in private practice, so they can determine if there's burnout or anything like that. So that's where the changes is right there. Previously in foundational, so in level 1, you could not provide supervision to someone else. Okay, you could only do that when you got to level 2 and you had 50 hours of supervision and you were more than 3 years post qualification. In the new proposed draft standard, you would not be able to provide supervision until you're at the advanced stage. Now, as we know with advanced, you would need to have a bachelor or a master of counselling to go to the advanced stage. Okay, and that hasn't changed in terms of level 3 and 4 with ACA. That's a bachelor or master. So a diploma and grade dip can go as high as level 2. So you go in at level 1 as high as level 2. But if you want to move to the higher levels, the clinical levels, 3 and 4, you need to have a bachelor or master of counselling. That has not changed in the standard. It's just the names have changed. We would no longer have a level 4. We would just have everyone incorporated under the new term, which would be advanced eventually. Okay. So the other thing they've introduced in this draft standard, that when you complete your diploma of counselling, grade dip, bachelor or master, you would go into the foundational level, but you would not be able to go into private practice. You wouldn't be able to go into private practice for at least 3 years until you moved into qualified. So you have over 450 client contact hours, over 45 hours of supervision. Then you would get what we call a license to practice, meaning that you could then start private practice. That's a huge change in the industry, whereas currently at the moment, and it is still business as usual. You could, with the Diploma of Counselling, you can now still and currently go into private practice. So this is a great opportunity, if private practice is an option for you at the moment, to get in, get registered, get your level 1 registration and start building your supervision and client contact hours, so that when the transitional comes in and the implementation comes in, you would automatically move over into that qualified section if you've got those hours. Everything with your current membership will just be transferred over into the new system. So I won't go through all the rest of this because it's quite explanatory, and I'm pretty sure Georgia sent out a copy. But I will put a matrix up in terms of how that impacts ACA registration and what it means for you guys in the future, okay? So this is about the scope. This is the feedback questions that the National Standards Project have asked of everybody. Okay, this is actually in the standard, so when you get a copy of it, you can go through and have a look and understand the standard and see if you've got any feedback. So should there be fewer or additional domains? So in that domain, there's not one for not practicing. So what happens if I'm not practicing for a while? Let's just say I've been practicing for 2 years and I need to take a leave of absence. I need to go into another role for 12 months, or I'm going to do something else for 12 months, or I'm burnt out and I need time off for 12 months. There's no domain in there for that. So that's where we'll be putting our feedback by. But there's always information you can read from the standard if you've got any questions. And if you've got any, we can answer them here afterwards. So this is our matrix. Okay, this is what compares to ACA registration, so the draft standard as it is now, to our current ACA registration. Now, as you can see, there's not a lot of red. Red's not bad. Red just means there's a difference, okay? And that's where things have changed a little bit. but there's not a lot of change, which is really fantastic. So as you can see, level 1, foundational, so it's up the top there. Years of experience is currently 0 to 2 years. So 2 years post-qualification, you can move to level 2 with 50 hours of supervision. The draft standard is saying that you need to be 3 years post-qualification with 450 client contact hours or 45 hours of supervision. That's the only difference there. Okay, and then as you read down the standard, the client contact hours is 0 to 500. They've got here draft standards less than 450. Okay, so yet again, it's a little bit less. Now they talk about practice hours in the national standard, client contact hours, practice hours. So 1 client contact hour is equal to I think it's 2 practice hours. And the reason why they've put that in is for recency. This doesn't impact anybody who's not more than 5 years post-qualification. So when, let's just say you did a diploma 8 years ago, you didn't do much with it, you might have only worked a little bit at the time, but because we don't accept qualifications that are more than 5 years old, you need to be able to provide recency, meaning that you meet the criteria. So that you've done your client contact hours, and that's what it's talking about when it comes to practice hours versus client contact hours. All right, it just helps get those with recency issues up to the standard. As you can see, 25 points of professional development is now 20 hours of CPD. But in foundational, there would no longer be private practice, where there currently is for all levels who can currently do that. As we move to level 2 qualified, so diplomas can go as high as level 2. You would need to be in that 3 to 5 years post-qualification. You would need to have that 500 to 750 client contact hours, whereas currently it's 50 hours of supervision. Your ratio of supervision would change, which would be 1 to 20, but you would get a license to practice under the new standard in order to go into private practice. So that's where some differences are. It's not a huge amount of difference, but also remembering this is future thinking. This is not today, tomorrow, or next year. All right. So I want you to sort of think about where you are now in your studies, how far you are away from graduating, getting your level 1 registration, and getting out there into the industry to start gaining those client contact hours. So I really want you guys to go and have a look at the standard, and maybe George has already sent this out to you, so you can go and have a look. You'll say it is extremely important. You can go onto the hub, and then you can give your survey reviews down there. There's a link you can follow and put your feedback in about your concerns, about what you think may or may not should happen, and just think about how it'll impact you down the path. So I'm open for questions. George, do you want to take it over for questions, and we'll go through a little bit of question time, because I'm sure there's many.
There are some questions, Karen, as you would imagine.
Yeah.
So look, I'll just go through a couple of the questions that that've been put in the chat first, and we'll go from there.
Sharing, and that way I can actually go to my chat a little bit easier and have a look.
All right, so just put my okay, so somebody's asking they didn't so if someone with a diploma of counselling couldn't move to the advanced stage regardless of experience, is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the only people who can move to advanced is those with a bachelor or master of counselling. At this point in time, which is exactly the same as the model is now with ACA registration. In order to move to level 3 or 4, which is advanced, you would need to have a bachelor or a master of counselling.
Yeah, and that can be done. I know that I've done it through continuing professional education to go and do another award. Yep,
absolutely.
All right. Can you still have your own private practice until it comes into play? So assuming that someone is qualified now, or graduates now.
Absolutely, nothing has changed. Obviously, once implementation is announced, there will be a date way into the future. So you'll have a date in which you know that you won't be able to. So what you can do is work really hard and getting those client contact hours, getting those supervision hours up so you would roll into that qualified section. Now, be aware that we know these names are probably going to change. We've had a lot of feedback from our sessions that we've done about the foundational name, qualified, advanced. We have a feeling there's going to be name changes in there, so there'll be a little bit more, I wouldn't say titled, but definitely a little bit clearer at the moment. So like I said, this is a draft. Once the other one comes out, hopefully they'll put it out for visual again, but we're just not sure about that. But currently, as it stands, if you are in private practice, you can continue to do so. This is future thinking. This is future implementation. Like I said, this is not happening next year. So you can continue doing what you're doing. Everything is business as usual. Nothing has changed.
Okay. So as long as we meet the requirements for level 2, by the time the standards come in, or by the time that implementation date is set, we can continue in private practice.
That's correct. Yep. So if you're already at level 2, by the time implementation sets in, you would be eligible to roll straight over into what we call qualified at the moment. You would get your license to private practice. Now, I don't know what that license looks like. I don't know how it's going to be done, because that's a part of the implementation stage, which is part 2 of this project. We haven't got any news on that because we're still at the draft standard. Okay, whether that is a license to practice, whether it's a card or it's a thing on your phone, or whether it's something you pay extra for, or it's built into your membership fees, we don't know yet. We just don't know what that looks like. But you will have to have a license to go into private practice. So moving forward, if you're currently in practice, you just need to move towards your 50 hours of supervision, get up to level 2, and you would automatically roll over.
And they'll have, and I mean, it looks like they'll have quite some time to do that.
There's quite some time to do that. Yeah. And like I said, we're advocating for 3 to 5 years. PACFA, who is the other registration body who is involved, remembering that PACFA don't accept diploma members at this point in time. ACA is the only one. But remembering that, you know, this is just an implementation stage. They're also asking for 3 to 5 years as well. So we're all on the same page there. So we wouldn't be expecting to see this for quite some time yet. So you've got time to get to where you need to go.
Yeah. Someone's asking if there's any consideration if you currently hold another qualification or degree within the health field and you are actively working in the relevant field. That'd be a question for, I'd imagine, ACA to look at if an application comes in, right? Yeah.
So currently, let's just use this as an example. Let's just say I have a Bachelor of Social Work. And I completed a Diploma of Counselling, right? The Bachelor of Social Work does not come into play with ACA registration. The reason being is because we're all in self-regulated spaces, and the social work have their own association. That's the Australian Association of Social Workers. You would generally register with them as a social worker. Whatever's done in that space can't be taken over into your diploma space. When you're registering with ACA. So it's not currently under the standard and the draft standard going to be recognised to be able to go up to a higher level at this point in time. Now, does that mean this standard might change over the next 10 years and that might be okay? Maybe, we don't know. But currently as it stands, any other pre-qualification, in the same way it is now with our current registration, we do not accept them for registration. So if you have a Bachelor of Psychology, a Bachelor of Social Work, Occupational Therapy, Nursing, we can't take them into ACA registration because it must be from your first qualification in counselling.
Thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, okay. So there's some questions in here that I think we can answer later. They're general questions around supervision, and people are asking whether you need to pay for supervision. Yes, you do need to pay for supervision once you get out there. Your clinical supervisor will have a fee. That's just the standard across the entire industry.
Yeah.
So yes, that is true. There is a good question here though. Can we do the 500 hours or the 450 hours of pro bono or at a reduced rate to get to get the hours to go to level 2. And I think they don't have to be paid hours, do they, necessarily?
No, volunteering is perfectly fine. Yeah, it doesn't matter where your hours come from. They can be from paid employment, private practice, or they can be from volunteering. So if you're still in the processes of studying your Diploma of Counselling, getting out now and doing client contact hours and getting that industry experience is highly recommended. When I come out and talk to my students on the road shows, I talk about volunteering and how much of a benefit it can be whilst you're studying, because not only are you studying in the field, you're also learning in real time with real organizations, working with real people with real issues. And it's definitely a great way to get some client contact hours. Even once you've graduated and you're registered at level 1, you can still continue to do that volunteer work. Those hours will be counted towards your requirements. Any supervision you do in a volunteer role can be added to your yearly requirements. Absolutely. It's considered the same.
There's a question here, actually, it's a good one, about whether lived experience will be taken into account. So sort of like RPL type thing, I guess.
Look, when it comes to lived experience, that's between the person and their provider, whether they can demonstrate that they've met the criteria of a unit or whatever is in that qualification. Lived experience is fantastic. Lived experience gives a lot of counsellors direction in where you want to go and what you want to work in. Speaking of experience, I have 2 children who are neurodiverse, both diagnosed with Asperger's at a very young age. As a parent, I knew a lot about that, had a lot of lived experience, but that doesn't make me qualified to deal with other people's children who are in that neurodiverse space. So lived experience is fantastic, but I also recommend, if you're transferring that lived experience into your qualification in counselling and then going into your speciality in that particular field, if that's what you're really passionate about. Every speciality, whether it be trauma, depression, mental health, sexology, relationship counselling, all has qualifications that you can do to call yourself a specialist. Okay. At this point in time, lived experience is not considered as to go into a qualification to meet criteria for membership. It's more of a direction of where you want to go with your qualification moving forward, if that makes sense. The other thing I just wanted to say with supervision, you brought up before about it being paid. Yes, supervision is paid. In the workplace, it's not. Okay, so if you can find a role where you have a workplace supervisor, it's not. Supervision can be done in a group setting. So I really recommend for you guys who are just starting out, getting group supervision, because I think you learn a lot more with other counsellors, your peers, asking questions in supervision sessions that you may not have thought to ask. And it comes up, and I see it a lot in our chapter meetings and things where people ask questions and I'd never even thought about that. But you get to learn a lot more in a group setting than you would in an individual session. Individual sessions are great when you've built up your client contact hours and you've got your clients coming through and having one of those once a month. But having a group session, I think you'll find most beneficial. And they're a lot cheaper too, because the rate's a lot cheaper going into a group session. And you can also do them via Zoom, Skype, and you can do them face-to-face as well.
So just on that too, Karen, just to make it clear, there's no point in anybody getting supervision until you graduate and join the ACA.
Yeah.
If you do it now, it doesn't count.
No, if you do it now, it doesn't count. It has to be post-qualification supervision. So going out and doing supervision now would be of no benefit if you are not in practice. Okay. And being on an ACA student membership, you shouldn't be in private practice until you've completed your diploma. So just to be aware of that. But once you are registered and you are done and you start your supervision, that is where you would start banking those hours in. Absolutely.
Here's a question that we do get a lot, Karen. Is the title of counsellor becoming a regulated title, or will it be possible even after this, the standards come in, to become to actually be called a counsellor without anything? Yeah. Absolutely.
I hear that a lot in terms of that title counsellor. Look, at this point in time, the standard is not there to make a title. Okay. We're not ready for that yet, I don't think. And the reason why is because counsellors have the ability, unlike social workers and psychologists, counsellors have the ability to work in so many different role names and role types in so many different industries. We can literally work across all different mental health fields. And having that title at the moment, we're just not at that point, and national standards hasn't really come into that yet. Now, is that something down the track? Absolutely, but we have to get the standard right first, and then we can start looking at title protection. When you're looking for work, don't always use the word counsellor looking in the title, because not all counsellors work in a role called a counsellor in many cases. And I can show that when I do my roadshow with you guys, and I can show you the varying roles that counsellors can work in. But at this point in time, no, this is not about title protection. We're hoping that'll come down the track once the standard is developed and it's implemented, because it can be changed at reviews years down the track.
There's some people asking, they're already members of other associations. So the ACCA, for instance,
Sure.
Would they be able to carry client contact hours over to the ACA? I imagine it would be yes, because they're client contact hours. Right?
Correct. You just need to be able to provide the evidence of those client contact hours and supervision hours that you've provided to other bodies. Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you can upload that in your application.
There's some questions around volunteer counsellors and things like that, but maybe we need to leave that till you do the roadshow, because I know that you talk about all those sorts of things and other employment opportunities.
Yep,
and everyone, so we are going to organise at least the first roadshow for early in the new year with Karen, if she'll still have us.
Oh, absolutely. I'll have you multiple times a year. It's all good.
Yeah, no, we want to run it multiple times, but it's where it's a fantastic opportunity to learn more about the opportunities for people that do the diploma. But anyway, so let's keep going here.
Yeah. But you also have to remember that with this standard, and being that it's a draft, this is going to create so many more employment opportunities out there for diploma level counsellors, because there's so much industry confusion at the moment out there, whether I can, whether I can't, if I do, what role can they play? There's a lot of confusion out there, and I deal with that industry every single day. This standard, now that diplomas are written into the standard, now that the Department of Health recognises you guys, there will be so many roles and opportunities created, and you watch this space grow in the next year to 2 years. Now that the standard's out, now that they're aware, once the standard is signed off, so many opportunities are going to start happening. There's going to be a lot more in the mental space, in governments opening up. This is a government project, remember, so they have to create the roles and the jobs for you guys to go into. So they're definitely going to be out there, and there's going to be a lot less industry confusion now, whether they can or they can't. So it's going to be very, very clear now.
Thanks, Karen. Look, I'm just wondering, we still have some time, and if someone wants to ask a question, please type it into the chat. Because I think we've covered most of the sort of general questions there. So just to be clear then, while we're giving people a chance to type something in, just want to be 100% clear. So if you're studying the diploma now and you finish the diploma before whatever that particular date is, which is in 3 years' time, let's say, what does that mean? You can join the ACA and start practice, yeah?
Yep. Currently, as it stands, nothing has changed. If you're a member of ACA, I highly recommend, if you're not a student member, getting your student registration. I can actually put that into the chat. Give me
That would be great. Yeah.
2 seconds. I will just grab it.
And we do encourage all of our students to join as student members of the ACA. You get a lot of benefit from that.
Sorry, George, you can just keep talking while I find
okay. You don't have to ask me twice. So
finding my QR code.
You get a lot of benefit from being a student member, and you not only do you get their newsletters and things like that, but you're also kept up to date with information on the industry. And it makes it a lot easier. It's much more streamlined to go from student to level 1 once you finish the diploma. It's really easy.
Pop that in I popped that in the chat.
Okay.
Oh, it's spinning. There we go. So I do highly recommend having student registration because I will keep you up to date with what's happening. It'll be through my student newsletter, which I do, which is targeted towards students only. But then we also have our monthly bulletin, which is done by Jody and the rest of our team, giving you industry updates, professional development opportunities that are for free. There's many things that you can be doing now while you're studying, just in professional development that's free, you know, getting some free information. So I highly recommend it because you will get real-time industry updates on what's happening and where it's coming through. Like I said, only PACFA and ACA were involved in the development of this standard. We were the only ones consulted. So it's really important to follow the industry leaders in terms of what we're doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, ACA have really come to the table advocating for the diploma and advocating for those standards that the diploma holds as well. So, you know, we're very happy that that the standards have recognized that there is a significant spot there for people that that enter the field with a diploma. It's fantastic.
That's right.
Great
That's
work.
right. That's right. And we've advocated very heavily for that because, you know, I know members who have been practicing with diplomas of counselling for 25 years and, you know, haven't wanted to upskill to something else and doing perfectly fine in the industry. We support our diverse membership and we've always had that diversity in our membership. And it's really great to see that the government has reflected that.
Thanks, Karen. There's a couple of questions here. One's a really good one about recording the hours. So my understanding is that, of course, we'll as practitioners, we all have records of our of the sessions that we run. But the ACA, my understanding, bases it on supervision hours.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
the way, so could you just explain to the participants how that's recorded?
Yeah, so currently as it stands, there's really two ways to record your supervision. So we upgrade currently on supervision and that's not going to change at the moment. So any supervision you do should be used an ACA supervision logbook. We have a logbook that's specifically to record it. You just fill in the date, the time, how long it was for, the name of the supervisor, and the supervisor signs off the session, okay? You can also email it to your supervisor and they can just keep it with them and sign it off and send it back when you've done everything. Or your supervisor can write a letter at the end of your renewal period stating how many hours of supervision you've received. It has to be on company letterhead, of course, if it's workplace. If it's a private supervisor, it needs to be on their private supervisor letterhead. But it needs to state how many hours of supervision you've received over the past 12 months. And if you attended 10 sessions, it should have all 10 sessions listed and how long each one was for. And they just need to sign that and you can upload that as evidence as well. Because when you're logging in your supervision hours, you need to log in the date you had the session and how long that session was for. And then you have to upload your evidence, which is the letter or the logbook showing that your supervision has been recorded. Now, under the new standard, you know, they're talking about client contact hours. I always recommend keeping a track of your client contact hours. Now, you can use a digital diary. If you have a workplace system, usually they get logged in there. Make sure you take regular dumps of those hours and keep them somewhere at home. In case, you know, for whatever reason you leave and you forget, you've at least got something. Or an Excel spreadsheet as well. I know people that use an Excel spreadsheet to record their hours. Currently, as it stands, we don't need them for requirement. It's not a requirement. Supervision is the current requirement. And it's business as usual. When the implementation changes with the draft standard or the standard comes in, we will let you know what will be the new requirement. We will be developing a new way of being able to log those client contact hours if it's still client contact hours required to move, or it's going to be supervision hours. We just don't know yet. It's a draft. Anything could change.
Yeah. So we're talking about supervision, specifically clinical supervision, which is post-graduation. It's a requirement right now. If you join the ACA as a level 1 member, you need a certain number of hours of supervision a year. And that shows the ACA that you've done, you know, for every 1 hour of supervision, it's like 10 hours of, it's about 10 hours of client contact.
20 at the moment.
Yeah, 20 hours of client contact. So So that's how the ACA work out how many client contact hours you've had. But yes, it's specific clinical supervision. It's not like the supervisor if you're in a job who's just sort of managing you. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a specific time where an ACA accredited supervisor, they've got a whole list of all the accredited supervisors on the ACA website. Once you become a level 1 member, you'll have access to that. And so you've got to have your supervision with one of those people. And it can be, like Karen said, it could be group supervision. It can be one-on-one. Group supervision is great because it's cheaper, but you also have a lot more people that you're hearing, that you're listening to. And so you get a lot more experience.
Yep. And you can also claim 2 hours of peer supervision per membership year as well. And peer supervision is with someone who's not a supervisor at all. So it could be another student counsellor that you may bounce ideas or things off with clients, or it could be another counsellor, it could be a social worker, it could be a psychologist. You can claim 2 hours of peer supervision per membership year as well, as long as the person signs off your logbook to say that they gave that 2 hours to you. That's fine.
Couple more questions. Someone's just asking if you could just quickly remind us what constitutes a client contact or client contact hour.
Yep. So client contact. So where the draft differs in terms of, we go off client contact, meaning that if you have a 45-minute, so just say you got an hour booking with someone, right? That's not 1 hour of client contact. Usually you've got a 15-minute preparation in there somewhere. So it would be a 45-minute client contact hours. So client contact hours is directly with your client, whether it be on the phone, via Zoom, face-to-face, whatever it is. In the standard, they talk about practice hours, whereas I think it's 2 practice hours equals 1 client contact hours. That practice hour is what they refer to client notes and doing all that client stuff. So they've just done it a little bit differently in the new standard. But currently, as it stands, a client contact hour is just the time in which you spend with the client. If your hour session runs for a full hour, it's a full hour of client contact. Generally, I suggest rounding it up, 45 minutes, make it an hour, it's either 30 minutes or an hour is generally where I go, is the best way to do it. And just keep track of that in a digital diary somewhere, or like I said, spreadsheet, something like that.
Right. Okay. Do group sessions for things like DBT and domestic violence count? If they're group supervision sessions, yes. If it's group supervision, it would definitely count, wouldn't it, Karen?
Yeah, but if you're in a speciality working in a certain field and you have a group supervision session in that special modality, absolutely. If it's just a group of people getting together and having a chat, that's not supervision. Supervision needs to be run by someone who is the designated supervisor. So whether it be a workplace designated supervisor or a private practice supervisor, it needs to be run in a context of a supervision. Otherwise, it's considered professional development or training. Okay.
Yep.
So it must be someone officially running it as a supervisor. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Some of the questions that have been asked are more general in nature in terms of, what sort of specializations would be good for the. And perhaps some of those are better answered in the roadshow because they're around.
I really talk about specialities. So you've all done the right thing by getting your qualification in counselling first. That's the best step. I have a lot of people that go into specialities to start and realise that they can't get registered because they don't have their general counselling qualification. So by doing the diploma first and getting registered at level 1 will then open up your door to be able to go on to specialities. There are so many specialities these days, but we are seeing with the introduction of the national standard, but also industry changes throughout the last couple of years, that more and more people working in specialities need to have some sort of formal qualification or formal certification in that particular field. So mental health, for example, the minimum qualification to work in mental health is a Cert 4 mental health. Okay. Then you can go on to do a bachelor or master in mental health if that's the route you're going. Especially in equine therapy. Like I get a lot of people wanting to do equine therapy. There are only 3 providers in Australia that'll give you certification. Now, it's not a qualification, it's a certification to become a registered equine therapist. Okay, they have their own standard. So there's lots of different specialities, lots of different qualifications that you can do. But you can also do a lot of professional development in that particular field to see if that's something that you want to specialize in. Having that extra knowledge, as counselors, you never stop learning. That's one of the things. You will never
Yeah,
stop learning. Learning is for life when you are a counselor. And I highly recommend doing professional development or learning things in fields that you may not be interested in, because you never know what's going to walk through your door. And I always recommend, it might not be what you're interested in, but go do it anyway. Learn something new. Have something in your toolbox in case something does come across your path or through your door or in the workplace, that you have some knowledge in that particular field.
fantastic. Okay, just a couple of things here. Yes, IAP actually does our diploma, the way that we deliver it does have
Yep.
some specializations. Okay,
Yep.
that's different to a speciality. So what Karen's talking about is a speciality if you want to mainly work with domestic violence, or you'd have to actually go and do a course that specializes you into that. But our speciality, like I said, there's a mental health speciality. So you do
There's so
essentially
many.
what in a degree would be a major, for instance, and that actually gives you a named speciality. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll the only other there's someone's just wanting to know again how many clinical after you graduate, you need to do 10 hours of clinical supervision a year in level 1. Is that right?
Minimum, yeah. So
Minimum,
the
yep.
minimum requirement is 10 hours of supervision per membership year. Now, if you do 18 in that year, claim the full 18. Never claim the minimum. Always claim what you do. I get so many people that just claim the minimum because they don't want to go and upload the rest of it. And then they go, oh, I should have got all that in. And then you got to go put it back in. So if you do 20 hours of supervision a year, claim the 20. If you do 12 hours of supervision a year, claim the 12. Never claim the minimum. The minimum is there for those who work part-time in private practice who aren't seeing a lot of clients, okay? So that's why the minimum is there, right? So always make sure that if you just need to meet the requirement, it's 10 only, okay? But if you're exceeding your supervision, always claim what you have done. Absolutely, because it banks every single year. So you do 10 hours one year, 15 hours the next year, you've got 25 banked in the system, okay?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, which is great for the future. So
absolutely. Yeah, keep track of everything. Be really good at your paperwork. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's a great, a lot of us use that, just a simple Excel spreadsheet,
Yep.
one tab for client contact hours, one tab for supervision hours.
Yep.
Very, very simple. It doesn't have to be elaborate as long as you've got evidence. Yeah. That you can show if required.
Yep.
There's a number, there are, so online professional development courses are accepted by the ACA, but they have to meet some criteria. Would you?
Yeah.
Yep.
So you don't have to do so we have two forms of professional development at the moment. So there's ACA approved events. Those events are advertised on our website through our professional development tab. Then you have non-ACA approved events. So that's everything else. Okay. So it doesn't have to be from an ACA provider. It doesn't have to be from our ACA approved events. It can be non-ACA approved events, but it has to be counselling related, of course. And you have to receive a certificate of attendance or attainment. Okay. You cannot claim points without a certificate of attendance or attainment. The reason being is because we don't know whether you did it or not. A tax invoice receipt or a confirmation that you enrolled doesn't mean that you actually attended the event. So you must ensure that whatever event you are doing, whether it be online, face-to-face, that they do issue you with a certificate of attendance or attainment.
Thank you. So it's on that too. If you're a current student, so you haven't graduated yet, if you do any professional development now, it doesn't count.
No. I will take anything 3 months
Okay.
prior to your registration. Yeah. So
Okay.
just say you're 3 months out from graduating and you decided to do some, we will take on anything that's 3 months prior to registration. Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you just started, don't worry, finish all the
No,
plans
don't
first.
need to do it. No, focus on your studies. Get your studies done. That's what I want you to focus on, your studies. Yeah.
So ACA membership once you graduate is How much is it?
Okay, so that's one of the great things about ACA membership. We're actually really not that expensive. So normally for ACA registration level 1, it's $280. Okay, that's for your 12 months. But you also get a $50 discount for your first year. So it's only $230 for your first year of registration. All right, and that's really cheap. We also offer, if you're going into private practice, we have an insurance broker that we go through, and you can get your insurance through them by showing them your membership number, and you'd get a discounted policy for around about $180 a year. Now, we don't incorporate insurance into our membership. One, because not everybody needs it. If you're working for an organization or agency, you don't need insurance.
Yeah. So Karen, I think the answer to this next one is yes, but I need to check with you. So we have a student who's a lifeline crisis support counselor, and they do sort of 92 logged hours a year and supervision and professional development. So can any or all of that count?
Post-qualification, yes. Yep.
Excellent.
So whilst you are studying, if you still have not completed your diploma of counselling, no, we can't accept it yet. It has to be post-qualification when you register at level 1, because you're not yet qualified if you have not completed your diploma. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where you would transfer over level 1. And then everything you do in that lifeline crisis support work role, you can definitely be adding into your requirements for sure. But yeah, if it's prior, then unfortunately we can't accept it. But yeah, after it, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lifeline's great.
Yeah, Lifeline's first. Look, in terms of CPD too, it has to be counselling related, like Karen said. But yes, of course, mental health is counselling related. So anything in that area, mental health, domestic violence, you know, all those areas are definitely, you know, trauma-informed care.
Trauma-informed, anything that's counselling within a counselling modality, I guess, is what where we're going. But you just need to be sure that you have the certificate of attendance or attainment. Now, they don't always advertise whether they have one. Ask them before you enroll. Okay, to say, hey, do you guys issue a certificate of attendance? I need it for my registration body. Fantastic. If they say no, don't do it, or do it, but you won't be able to claim the points.
You won't be able to claim anything. So So yeah, well, look, we will be sending out a link to this recording and for later, and Karen will be sending me a link to the recording from Jody. Some of you won't be able to hear that properly, and so we'll make that all available. Karen, I'm wondering if you could shoot me the slides as well. People are asking if we could do that. I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
I'll just send you the whole presentation in a PowerPoint.
Send me the whole kit, and I'll disseminate it to everybody. Yeah. And just want to let everyone know, Karen, although she's very, very busy, she's always able to take your comments and emails. So if you have any other questions, could I suggest about the standards, about the ACA, can I suggest that 1, you become a student member because it's free, and 2, that you engage Karen because she's absolutely amazing. And I can almost guarantee you that she will have the answer to you a lot faster than I will. She'll know it off the top of her head. So, Karen, thank you very much again for your time. It's invaluable.
That's all right.
And we're so grateful for you and the ACA as you help us navigate these fantastic and exciting new times.
Yeah, please don't stress out. If anyone is stressed out about it, please contact me. I'm happy to talk to you about it, run through some scenarios. You know, everyone's got a different scenario. Not everyone is in the same boat of where they are, what's going on. If you are concerned or you are worried or you need a bit more clarity, please reach out to me. My email address is just karen@theaca.net. I can set up a 30-minute booking. I have a booking system where you can book a session with me and we can sit down and run through it. And usually it's very, very easily, very, very done. But please don't stress. Remember, this is future thinking. This is not today, tomorrow, or next year. And obviously having a really good look at the standard yourself, because this will impact you over, you know, the next 10 years. And getting involved in it. If you see a problem or if you see an error, get involved, put your feedback in. It's really, really important. And remember, it all closes next Friday. Once that's closed, it's over. So get involved now.
Get your stuff in. Yeah, absolutely.
Be involved. It's your industry. This is where you're going. This is your career. So definitely get involved.
Amazing. Thank you again, Karen. And thank you everyone for attending. We will make all this available. Okay. So just keep an eye out for an email with the links. Thanks again.
Thank
Have a good
you.
rest of the day, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.